Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I have another interview for you today. I got to sit down with Chris Denmead to talk about his original, it's kind of a universe at this point. It was a comic, it's a novel with some really awesome illustrations in it. It's called Vlada, a Dracula Tale. Vlada is kind of a gender swapped version of the original Dracula story, but it's not a one for one ratio of the story, and it's not the exact same thing, just with males as females, females as males, whatever. It's a cool thing that kind of takes on a life of its own, especially as he continues the series. And as I kind of alluded to already, it's evolved into more than just a comic, more than just a novel. He's working on a couple really unique things with it, which is cool. We talk about in the interview. It's a cool guy, another indie creator. Love supporting those guys. We actually met in person at a con, which might be the first interview where we've met in person at a con and then did a StreamYard or an online interview down the line. Anyway, it was really cool talking to this guy. I hope things work out for him because he's got a lot of awesome things in the work, and some of the originality he's pushing is really cool, so enjoy the interview. Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I'm sitting down with Christopher Denmead to talk about Vlada, a Dracula Tale. Christopher, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for being patient while we made this happen. I know we met at, Terrificon, like a couple months ago.
Yeah, no problem.
I was in the middle of a move, and it was just
my book
tough to put it together, but I appreciate you hanging in there because this is going to be really cool.
No worries. Glad we could get it done. So there's Vlada, Dracula Tale. There's the nude cover. There's copies of the newly printed copies of the original cover.
Very cool. So before we get to Vlada, though, I always like to ask creative people when they come on to go all the way back to the beginning of the creative journey. So in your case, comics. You've probably been a lifelong comic fan like most comic creators, but when did you decide you wanted to create them yourself?
Oh, I always think I always have wanted to. It's just a matter of whether or not I had the will to.
Okay.
And then my grandmother, who passed away last year, was always asking me, "You're always reading comics. How come you don't write your own comic books? Or, draw your own comics?" Little did she know I was not an artist, but I was just like, I will one day. And I kind of did in 2016. Back in 2014, when this was supposed to be a movie and an epic failure on Kickstarter for a movie, I decided, okay, we're just going to do a comic book. And so I started slowly with like one mini comic book origin story. And then few years later, during the pandemic, did this graphic novel with all the different artists involved. And then did another comic book right after, the same year that this got published. A few months later, me and the artist decided to do another tie-in comic. And now, as of sitting down here right now, today in the mail arrived the anthology book of Vlada with various artists and writers telling different tales of the characters within it. That is a book, but with pictures by various comic book related artists, like Tim Vigil is involved in it, and Don Peresi and a couple other people. Cosplayer Chandra Akerblom was also did work in it as well. Jenna Moquin and Scott C. Baker. And then next year in 2023, I hope, I've got like 3 other projects happening, but next year I hope to have Colleen the Vampire, which is like a spin-off of the Vlada book, as a comic book, come out.
Okay, cool. So was Vlada your first like all in, I'm going to write this and do this thing?
Yes. No. Yes. Yes in a way. No. You mean in terms of like a printed thing?
Well, I know you said you wanted it to start as a movie. That didn't work out, so you pivoted to comic book. But going back to like what your grandmother was saying of why don't you write your own comic, and you said I will.
That was my first comic book, but that was not my first published work.
That's very cool that the first thing you decided to like really sit down and write, you made happen.
Yeah, it was interesting. There's artwork on the wall. So right there above the Red Lantern cat, that is artwork from the first comic book. And that's the comic book right there, if my finger's pointing correctly.
Okay.
So that is Resurrection of Dracula. I don't want to move the camera too much just because of the wire being a pain in the ass, but that's also original artwork from the graphic novel too.
Oh, very cool.
That's how I met, by the way, right above the Bloodstorm, which is a character from Mutant X, if you're familiar with that X-Men alternate universe spin-off story. Yeah. Right there, the picture behind it is how I met the artist on the book, Ken Hunt, who is based out of the Maryland area. That is Vampirella with Black Cat. Oh, they're my two favorite comic book characters, female comic book characters.
It's also cool because you wrote this thing and now it's a real comic, and just some of the names you've mentioned, you were telling me about their body of work, is not only is it your first real endeavor, but you got to work with some serious industry names, and it sounds like people you looked up to. So that's also very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I sold artwork for Tim Vigil that he did of Vlada that he was selling, and he gave me an insane deal on a brand new original artwork for the anthology book, which I suddenly realized I don't have copies with me right this second. But and that allowed him to do like the cover and a couple original pieces, and he did a cover for this book as well, and the comic book Chronicles of the Damned, which is the cover for this was Kickstarter only, so it's no longer in print, which is kind of a big deal with like somebody like Tim Vigil, because mainly I was told he does not lend his artwork out for almost anything. So I constantly get asked, like, how did you get Tim Vigil to do artwork for your book? Or how did you borrow artwork for the book? Because the original pieces, the two pieces he did for me aren't original to Vlada. They're repurposed artwork that he redid for me. So, but still original in their own right. They've never been published, let's just say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd say that's
there's a big difference between finding images online digitally versus like, physically printed.
Mm-hmm.
Physical printed stuff still has value.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Especially for us comic fans.
Yeah, we met at an entire goddamn comic book convention where
yeah, exactly.
there's printed material everywhere. You can't tell me that's not valuable to people.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And original comic art is still a big seller. And I think probably even more so now that a lot of people are going digital because it makes it more rare.
Yeah, I mean, people say, I still talk to people who are shocked to find out vinyl came back, and like, which is the 3 box, like over this shoulder right here. Okay, yeah. So what I'm pointing at right here, that's 3 cubicle shelves of vinyl next to my comic book collection, and I still get shocked reactions from people. They're like, vinyl, and I'm like, yeah. This is 2022. It came back big like 12 years ago, and it's exploded over the last several years.
It's definitely a thing. I actually, like, if you go to a Best Buy, you'll probably find more vinyl than CDs at this point.
Yeah, you can't find any CDs at Best Buy as far as I'm aware. And I guarantee you go to a Newberry Comics, which I don't know if you're from around here, but Newberry Comics has like this little shelf of CDs and shelves of vinyl records. Like,
it's more of a collector's thing.
Yeah, it's definitely gone beyond being just a collector's thing with vinyl. It's reunited the music industry, obviously, in a lot of good ways, a lot of positive ways. Black Friday this weekend is going to have a big vinyl release sale, and I collect mostly scores and soundtracks. So there's 2 I'm looking forward to: Waxworks and Mimic scores on vinyl.
Yeah, that's funny because I never know what to get my wife for holidays. And she's really into classic rock. So I ended up getting a record player, speaker, receiver setup and everything, so I can constantly just get her new records. Yeah, the artwork is incredible to get it back on track.
Yeah. We're here plugging away Black Friday sales and
for things that's not even ours. Yeah. People go through the Vlada Kickstarter, even though the Kickstarter's over, but you have some nice pages on there. And the artwork, like the detail on that castle you were just holding up, is unreal that someone sat there with pen and ink and did it by hand.
Oh my God. It took Ken 2 weeks to draw that.
I'm sure it did.
Yeah. He did that in 2 weeks. That was the first thing that we sold on the Kickstarter. As soon as the Kickstarter launched, that sold immediately. The original artwork for that sold. Immediately. It was crazy. It probably helped the Kickstarter like hit its goal within a few minutes, because right afterwards, like an hour after the Kickstarter hit its goal, Ken's like, we need like stuff for the next goal. I'm like, what next goal? I didn't even the first goal.
More stretch goals than you thought.
We're like scrambling to come up with like buttons and pins and shirts and stuff and swag and just crap to give away.
Before we get to that, though, and I do absolutely want to talk about it because Kickstarter is its own crazy animal that I barely understand.
And I'm never doing that again because it's its own crazy animal of bullshit.
You did great, though.
Great. That doesn't mean I want to constantly do that. Leave that to like Wendy Shaner. She's a freaking amazing. And she's redoing all of her original comic books that she did digitally or whatever. And I got to tell you, you look at the artwork, this woman, and the reason why I bring it up, because she did a cover for me, and she was like my Kickstarter of teacher. So she did a cover for us of Vlada and Colleen. Colleen's the spin-off character from the book. Not entirely an original retelling of Dracula. You kind of need to make it your own, but we basically do gender swap the cast to keep that in perspective. She's going back and redoing all the artwork from all of her comic books, and it's so much better compared to what it was before. I thought it was fine, but the new stuff she's doing, I was like, my God, your artwork is so hot. And she draws like stripper assassin characters, big tits, big asses. You know what I mean? She is not afraid to like show off the female body in this like really incredibly sexy way. So, by the way, this cover right here was done by a woman named Veronica Kim. She's a Canadian Asian artist.
All right.
So this is a very popular seller at comic book stores because not because it's a nude cover, but because it's like just a lot of people like the aesthetic. I really don't want to give too much away if you can't have nudity on your show, but
yeah, I remember at Terrificon, I was talking to somebody else about the difficulties of Kickstarter, and you said, "Oh, you want to know the secret to getting your Kickstarter to fund?" And you held up that cover, and I was like, "Yeah, I guess that'll do it."
Well, no, this actually wasn't on the Kickstarter. We did this afterwards. This is the retail edition, so this is constantly in print.
Oh, you must have showed something similar then.
Maybe.
I mean, maybe even your original cover. It's
right, and this cover was the Kickstarter first cover, but it's been redesigned. The border has been redefined a bit, and also the backing on the back of it, you can't really see it except for here.
Okay.
And look who it's by.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That is the great grandnephew of Bram Stoker. His great grandfather was Bram Stoker's brother.
And how did you get a hold of him?
I had him on my show for if I'm not going to pull out my entire shelf, I had him on the show for this book, which is the first. This is the Stoker family sequel to Dracula, the original novel.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So he came on the show for this in 2010 with his writing partner. And in 2014, when we were going to do the failed movie, I asked him for a quote, and he gave me the quote to use for the press release. Years later, he told me he can't have anything to do with my book because of probably some things that have happened with people and stuff. Possibly, I'm sure it's a matter of like he just can't be knowledgeable of anyone else's version of Dracula, including one that is very different in a gender swap form. So it's probably a whole legal thing. But I asked him, can we use the quote on the back of the book if you can't review it? And he's like, that's fine. You can still use that quote. That's totally fine. In October of this year, he had a big freaking thing in Salem, and I bought a copy of the 125th anniversary edition of Dracula from him, signed by him, which has got all these like notes and all this extra like pages and stuff like that had been cut out of most of the printings. So it's basically like this complete, comprehensive, like unedited version of Dracula. And they also showed the 1933 Dracula, 31 Dracula with Bela Lugosi, the Gary Oldman Dracula from '92. And he did a whole meet and greet, and I gave him a copy of the comic book, not the book, and showed him the thing on the back of it, and he was just like, "Oh, that's great! Yeah, how's that working out?" I was like, "It's been fine." Everyone really compliments that quote on the back, and I was always worried you were going to forget about it and sue me for like using your words and something. He's like, "No, Chris, no." Because I didn't want him to like go into a store one day and go, "Wait a minute, what the hell did I say?"
Right. Yeah. I never wrote anything.
But no, he saw it and he was like, he was very congratulatory. He was he's very humble guy, Descartes Stoker.
I mean, I would think it has to be cool that something a great relative did is still sitting so strong with people. The fact that you are going to make, it's not a one-to-one, but the fact that you're going to take inspiration from and do your own version of this classic story that still holds water now, like it's got to just be surreal for even a descendant.
Right. And what's funny is I own one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine versions in various forms of Dracula, whether it's the original novel with artwork thrown there, like by Ben Templesmith, or the Hughes brothers did artwork, or Edward Gorey did artwork, or it's like, children's illustrated versions watered down for kids to read without all the extra old school language that, let's face it, children today would not get into. But I read it was my first version of Dracula. I ever read it when I was 12 years old. I stayed up all night reading it. It had pictures in it. It has a cool cover. I'm trying to see if I have it here or not. But it's the version of Dracula that I first read. And again, it was written for young children. You know what I mean? Kind of read. It's the same exact story, everything you're familiar with, but obviously written in a more contemporary, modern wording of the English language.
Yeah. Because I did at one point. I wanted to read the classics, like that Frankenstein, like 20,000 those, and they are tough to get your mind into that gear.
Right. Trying to see if I have it here or not to show you.
So was that like discovering that at 12? Was that why now as an adult you wanted to do Vlada, do your own spin on it?
I mean, I always knew who Dracula was. So, but I got the idea from watching a play where they gender swapped the whole cast of Macbeth. So that gave me the idea, and I kept looking every year to see if has someone done Dracula? Has someone done Dracula? No, nobody did Dracula. Nobody has done Dracula except for me. I sound like a bit of an ego about it, but it's still pretty refreshing that nobody's done Dracula except for me.
What is kind of funny when you point it out is like we've done almost as many versions of vampires as we've done zombies at this point, and no one's touched Dracula.
Right. Nobody's done a gender swap Frankenstein either. And someone's like, you should do that next. And I'm like, right. But no one's done the Bible yet either. What if I rewrote the Bible and I gender swapped everyone? Jesus was like a chick.
You did have the Bride of Frankenstein. I guess that's kind of close.
No, I mean that's a completely different story too. Yes, it has
not the same story at all.
In it. It does have elements from the novel in it, but no, I mean that's like a sequel. And Frankenstein's still a dude in that.
Yeah, otherwise he wouldn't have a bride.
Maybe, you never know in today's
that's true. Not making judgments.
But don't forget, he didn't make the bride for himself. He made it for the monster to have a companion.
Yeah, I never actually got too far into Bride of Frankenstein.
Okay, yeah. So he makes the bride because some like mad scientist coaxes him into doing it because he finds out the monster's still alive after the events of the first movie, and he's like, "Okay, so you got to make the monster a companion. It's gonna be this woman. She shows up for like 5 minutes, and that's it. I mean, she's iconic, but it's like 5 minutes at the end of the movie too. You gotta wait the entire movie to see Elsa Lanchester as the Bride of Frankenstein. You see her at the beginning playing Mary Shelley in a flashback, but no, she don't show up till the end. It's like watching Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. They don't fight till the very end, and it's a quick fight.
So
I think when they did Kong versus Godzilla versus Kong a couple years ago, they were like, we're going to get right on top of that aircraft carrier and just start beating the crap out of each other. And sure enough, in 10 minutes of that movie, that is exactly what King Kong and Godzilla did.
We know what people are buying the tickets
for. They did not want to wait till like the Batman versus Superman idiotic end fight or whatever, just for it to be like, Martha! And then it just ends the way it does. No, I mean, Godzilla and Kong get on that aircraft carrier and just start... You know what I mean? They're like, no, people want to see the fight right now. 10 minutes into that movie, it's monster on monster.
So for Vlada,
yeah,
you write it, you get a whole creative team together, it comes out awesome. And you were incredibly successful on Kickstarter, which is great. Was that your first ever Kickstarter?
Yeah, no, I told you about the one that was a failure in 2014.
Oh, that's right, the movie version.
Yeah, so that was a success, and then a couple months later, we did another one for the audiobook, which was read by Diana Porter. So there's an audiobook of Vlada out as well.
Very cool.
Next thing I want to do is a play. I don't need to run a Kickstarter for a play. I just need to get a playhouse to buy the script for the play.
Yeah, or if you have the time, rent the playhouse and.
Yeah, no. No. A playhouse. If a playhouse is interested, I will sell them the script, and I just want to make sure the play is performed exactly the way I wrote it. That will be in the contract to use my play script.
Yeah,
but that's the next idea is to do a play script because a lot of playhouses I've talked to were like, "What about a gender swap Dracula?" I'm like, "Ooh, that sounds like a good idea." Like, how many characters? 9? They're like, that's easy, you know?
Yeah.
How many other characters? Like 3 or 4 really kind of minor ones. They're like, oh, that's perfect because we try to have like a 10 to 20 cast, 10 to 20 person cast.
Yeah, it seems doable.
Yeah, you know, and shrink a character down into another character is fine. I'm not going to care about that so much, but
And not a ton of locations.
I kind of cut a character out of my book. I cut Jack Stewart out of my book. Jacqueline Stewart. She's in there, but she's really toned down a lot. It was just to get the book short.
Yeah.
Dracula is like 300 pages or something like that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
A long read for sure.
Mine's 80 pages. 55 of it is words.
So for your Kickstarters, because especially for like indie creators, indie comic creators, even indie novelists, everyone that I've talked to on this show who gotten a Kickstarter, their first couple, even if they were successful, were like a rough endurance match. And it sounds like you kind of found it maybe in the same way when you said you wouldn't necessarily want to do it again.
I didn't find it rough. I just don't have the time, I think. I don't think I have the dedication. I did it during the pandemic too. So I was staying at home.
Yeah.
But I would be excuse me, I would be convinced to do another Kickstarter for a project I'm working on if the goddamn art team is dedicated as hell, because the artists have got to push the project too. When you run a Kickstarter, if you have a team involved, you cannot be the only one pushing the book. Everyone involved has to push it at launch. All their fans, all their followers, all their friends and family, wives, girlfriends, dogs, and cats, at the same time you launch that thing, they got to be ready, or at least within an hour. Make sure you figure out when everyone's out of work and be like, okay, it's 6 o'clock p.m. We're Eastern Standard Time. We're launching this thing. So make sure you are tweeting and posting everywhere to get people involved. Start doing it ahead of time. You got to make sure you're doing it ahead of time. Tim Vigil has a Kickstarter coming up soon for Faust. The entire collection of his Faust comic book is being collected for the first time ever. It's the original graphic, hardcore fucking book. I mean, it's violent as hell, and there is a lot of sex in that book. And I mean hardcore, pornographic, close-up shot sex stuff. And he's collecting it for the first time ever in this like $125 hardcover. And he's already got over 600 followers on the Kickstarter page, and it doesn't launch until next week.
Wow. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and he's my artist on Vlada. He's one of my artists on Vlada. You know what I mean? It's kind of a thing. I mean, I'm saying Tim Vigil's not like this huge, massive success in the Marvel and DC pantheons, but in the independent underground world, oh God, yeah.
Well, and also it sounds like he knows what he's doing as far as getting himself out there, marketing himself.
Right. And Ken Hunt, the artist, the actual artist on Vlada, Dracula Tale and Vlada Chronicles of the Damned, he, he's worked for DC and he's worked for Brian Polito's Coffin Comics, Lady Death. You know who she is? White chick, all white skin, black bikini, big breasts. And he's working on something. If you're a friend of his on Facebook, he's not posting beyond his Facebook friends, but he's got something coming up with another buxom character in Pantheon of Comics.
An original character? Or you cannot say too much?
No. He's got an original thing coming up that's going to take him a good 5 years to put together, which I cannot believe he is doing. But it's going to be all original artwork, all original interpretations of things. But his other thing that he's currently working on is a well-known IP.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And again, like gothic buxom.
Right in your wheelhouse.
It's good stuff. I mean, I'm not going to draw ugly vampires. And you can interpret that as however you want.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna say one person is ugly. I think everyone has. I'm never gonna say one particular type of person is ugly. I think everyone has beauty, but let's face it, there are ugly vampires out there. Nosferatu's and that thing that Blade, fries in the Blade movie.
Yeah, there you go.
As an ugly vampire.
I think that's kind of undeniable. No one's gonna argue with you on that. Yeah. So as far as you're going as like a writer, you mentioned a play version would be cool to see. Do you have anything outside the Vlada kind of universe that you're working on? Yes.
There is another comic book I'm working on called Detective Demona in the Case of the Human Trafficking Cannibals. That is going to be a office story, detective story, crime noir, and then turns incredibly horrific and pornographic at one point. I mean, to the point that I had to send the artist, who wasn't quite understanding how I wanted a certain oral sex scene to be done, I had to send him like images of pornography and be like, I need it drawn like this. And he's like, oh, okay.
You gotta have a good trust.
I had to like type into Google sitting oral sex while sitting in chair, and then I came up with everything I wanted. But it's a crime noir. She's like Eddie Valiant. She's a succubus. You know, she's and if it continues, if I do another one, every comic book will be called Detective Demona in the Case of the blah blah blah.
Right. Okay.
And then there's a TV show I'm working on, which me and somebody from Screen Rant have been trying to get together. It's just a matter of getting help to get it together. It's going to be about deceased comic book artists and writers in the comic book industry.
So more of like a docu-series.
Yes, but not a YouTube show. I want it to be a streaming show on a streaming network.
Like a legit show, yeah.
Yeah, even if it's like Tubi or something, you know what I mean? That would be totally fine. A lot of people use Tubi. Tubi wanted to buy it for original content. I'd be like, yeah, you can buy it. I just want the money to make more.
Yeah, that's cool. And how far along the process is that? Or
pay people to help be involved in the project. You know what I mean? And every episode is going to be about somebody like Stan Lee, but we'll probably never do Stan Lee. We'll probably never do Jack Kirby. We'll probably never do Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, Bob Kane, or Bill Finger either.
There's the ones that not everybody knows.
Right. I would do Steve Ditko, sure, because nobody knew who Steve Ditko was, but I'm not gonna do this guy. He's got 1,000 of these fucking things all over the goddamn internet. I don't need to do an episode about Stan Lee. Because I will mention Stan Lee enough times in other people's episodes, probably. But the first episode will be about Mark Grunwald. For anyone of your listeners who is not familiar with Mark Grunwald was brought back to life, being played by Owen Wilson in Loki. That is Mark Grunwald. That is literally Mark Grunwald. His wife, Catherine Schuler, has been working with me on this, his widow, Catherine Schuler. But Mark Grunwald's other biggest claim to fame, he wrote Captain America for 10 goddamn years.
Yeah, that's amazing.
He created the Serpent Society. He created John Walker. He created Crossbones. He created A Sin, the Red Skull's daughter. He created Capwolf, as crappy as that was.
Hey, 10 years, you got to come up with something.
But he also was the guy who wrote the Bible for the Marvel Universe, called The Official Handbook to the Marvel Universe, with entries for over 500 characters.
Was that the was it late 70s that came out, was it?
Early 80s. Early 80s. They did it before DC did their Who's Who.
Because I know they kind of made a newer version just a couple of years ago, and it's a gorgeous book.
Well, no, that's the reprint. That's the whole collection.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a whole new thing they did just in the same vein.
They did a bunch of updated stuff. They're probably due for a good update recently. But honestly, I don't think there's a market there anymore for people like me and you to buy that sort of thing. So they're doing update entries in the back of characters' comics, or an event book comes out, they'll put out one being like, oh, so these are a bunch of reprinted profiles, but we're adding in the last 3 years since the last time we published about them.
I guess that makes sense, and like what you said about the market, because like it's basically like a book when you could go to Wikipedia.
Right. And I did that for Vlada and Anastasia Van Helsing. Anastasia Van Helsing is my Abraham Van Helsing. They have a Marvel kind of profile in the back of a comic book as well. Anastasia Van Helsing is also my decision to make the cast not entirely white by making her black.
And was that just to
diversify the book? Yes.
Yeah.
Not to be woke or whatever other stupid bullshit people want to call out. Nobody's ever called me out on it. They just asked why I did it. I was like, have you ever read Dracula? It's a pretty goddamn white cast. It's like black people. It's like black people got freed from slavery, and then nobody wrote about them in fiction afterwards.
Well, I was wondering if you did story changes as well to change the character's lineage, or is it just
no? She's still like British, Dutch. It's mentioned really. Chandra Akerbaum, who's a cosplayer, you should look up. She wrote a kind of a bit of a story involving her, and there's a couple of interesting little nods to Tomb of Dracula in there. The one thing I will say about Vlada, it is the cast of Dracula gender swapped. It is not the story of Dracula, because as we said before, the original story of Dracula is kind of dull and needs an update with the wording. And I threw a bunch of homages to other things in there. Like there's a mention that Anastasia fights a fought a vampire in a silver coffin named Norin.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know that one.
Okay, so there is no vampire named Norin. There is a character in the Marvel universe called the Silver Surfer named Norin Rad. And in Tomb of Dracula, number 50, I'm not even kidding, the Silver Surfer fought Count Dracula. Just to really show you that Count Dracula is in the Marvel universe.
Yeah,
and,
Marvel did horror
and in
comics
fact,
a bit.
last week, Blade, a one-shot came out, Blade Vampire Nation, where Blade and Dracula have to work together to solve an assassination attempt on Dracula's life.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that just came out last week from Marvel. And of course, I think in February, Blade's daughter book comes out.
The spin-off series you mentioned a couple times, is her name Courtney, I think you said? Your spin-off to Vlada.
Oh, Colleen. Yes, Colleen. She's the apprentice of Vlada.
Terrible names, even character names.
No, that's fine. Colleen, she's a short, spiky, like her hair is like mine. I like a girl with really short, incredibly spiky hair. So she's based on like my type of woman that I would guess be into. I like women with long hair too. Vlada has long hair, but I'm just saying I've got an attraction to women with really short hair. And like Jamie Lee Curtis, good example. So she's got like really short red spiky hair. She's this tiny petite little vampire. She's probably like 17 or 18 at the time that she's turned, and she kind of continues Vlada's legacy on. I haven't finished writing the story yet, so I can't say much more than that. But I do have plans to make a music video to help promote the comic book.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's going to be a song that might be written by somebody. I can't talk about the details just yet because we haven't worked out all those details.
Right.
But it's going to be basically the actress playing the vampire, like riding a motorcycle along a lake as the sun's setting, but we'll reverse it. It'll be like the sun rising, just because it's easier to do that first thing in the morning when the roads are dead on a Saturday. Mm-hmm. And then she's going to run right into like a black woman who will be like Anastasia Van Helsing.
Okay.
So, and the music video will play through it. You know, flashes of images from the book will kind of pop up. However, a music video should be edited together. There's no wrong way to make a music video. There's just wrong way to write music, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Music can be written badly. I've noticed a lot of music videos. You know, if you know what you're doing and it looks all right, then you should be fine.
And if you don't know what you're doing, it looks deep, right?
Yes. I'll go deep into the whole thing.
So for this being a sequel to a kind of turned on its head version of Dracula, does it become even further removed and more of your
this will become like completely removed. We're going to kill off one of the main characters very quickly in the book for shits and giggles. It will probably be the most bloodiest thing happen in the book, just because it's going to be like Mortal Kombat spine ripping, out kind of way. And there'll be like one sex scene, but nothing gratuitous like the way I described earlier with Faust. But otherwise it will be pretty much still PG-13.
Okay, that's
because
cool.
Vlada is PG-13. Chronicles of the Damned, the comic book, is PG-13. Tales of the Damned, which is the anthology book that just got completed, I guess is PG-13. But I just reread my story, and I went a little nuts with the violence and the sex. I didn't even realize it, but that's okay.
Yeah, PG-13 is a wide target.
Right, but none of the images in the book are. Everyone's clothed or got clothes on, you know what I mean? Even if they're busty or not, they're still dressed. So, but the stories themselves, I would say it's maybe my story is R-rated, maybe one other person's is R-rated.
Okay.
Just because of the sex, probably, so.
Right, yeah, that's always the weird line where you can have pretty much as much violence as you want, but yeah.
Right, I mean, I don't go into super big description about what happens with the sex, just more like, you kind of use your own imagination and you'll see.
Right. All right, well, do you want to tell people where they can find all of your current works now since the Kickstarter's been over?
Yes, they can find, I thought I had the hardcover with me, but I guess I don't. So if they go to Vlada on Facebook, they can message me, order a copy there. There's a Facebook store. It's not always great, but Vlada, A Dracula Tale in softcover, hardcover, and the audiobook are all on digital. The digital, the hardcover, the softcover are on Amazon and my Etsy store. My Etsy store has all the books and the comics and swag. Vlada, Dracula Tale, if you look it up on Etsy. And then that's the best way to do it. If you have a local comic book store, you can ask them to order it from me. But it is available on Amazon if you just want to easily get it from there. Just warning, Amazon's not the best about packing comic books, graphic novels.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I totally forgot. Go to like That's Entertainment in Worcester. Go to Vamp Fangs in Salem, or Silver Moon Comics in Salem, or order White Rabbit Comics online. Cyberpunk, I think is the name of the store. And there's a bunch of retailers that have bought my book too. Definitely support them as well.
Very cool. Well, Christopher, thank you very much for coming on and talking to us about Vlada and your whole creative thing. It sounds like you got a lot of really cool stuff going, spinning a lot of plates.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you having me on.
Definitely, yeah. We'll have to do it again when you get your spin-off going, and if the play goes, I really want to hear about that, because I think that's...
Oh, yeah. The play needs somebody who knows how to write a play, too. I don't.
Yeah, you have to work with somebody, but that's a really cool thing to pursue.
Right, yeah. I got to look for a playwright to help me with that, because I don't know stage direction at all. At all. And you got to write that into the script, you know what I mean? It can't just be the dialogue. You got to write stage direction for people.
Right, yeah. That's awesome, though. And I never even would have thought about that, so it's really cool. So, yeah, I wish you the best of luck in the future, and, hit us up again, and we'll do it again when you got the next thing coming.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Chris one more time for coming on the show to talk to us about Vlada, his future plans, his spin-off series, creating comics, writing, the whole deal. He's got a lot of awesome talent behind him. This guy is really putting together a dream team of creators. It's awesome what he's doing, and it's just really cool to see someone without deep roots in the industry being able to plant those roots and get things going. So check out Vlada, check out Chris's other works, and of course, make sure you like and subscribe. A lot more interviews, new movie coverage. Amazon screeners are starting to flood in again. Everything cool coming your way. You're not going to want to miss out. Speaking of not wanting to miss out, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week, wherever you get your podcasts. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, videos, merchandise, and more. We love hearing feedback, so drop a note in the comments. Leave us something on social media. All the accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. And on a more personal note, a good friend and I have an ongoing comedy comic series. It's called Social Studies. It's kind of a slice of life, sitcom kind of written comic book that takes inspiration from all the 90s cartoons that we grew up on, we love, and inspired us. You can find all available issues at socialstudiescomic.com. We're also on Comixology. We're also on Global Comics. More stuff coming to those platforms and more new issues coming out. A lot of stuff in the works. Check it out. Thanks.